Welcome back. It's time for my weekly critique of the CFP committee's rankings. Here's what the committee came up with following the results of week 12. Now I'm going to switch up my format a little bit this week and focus on some particular areas of the rankings and certain teams that were evaluated in a way doesn't seem to match the results. Off with the 3 through 10 range here and looking at Georgia and why they are number 10. I have every team's 3 best wins listed from best to worst, left to right, and then every team's losses on the right side, left to right, best to worst. Win at Texas is the best win that any of these teams have. Georgia's wins against Clemson on a neutral field and against Tennessee in a home game are better than the second and third wins of everyone who has one loss of these teams. And Indiana has nothing that comes close to matching up with Georgia's wins. Alabama and Ole Miss are the teams with the closest wins to Georgia's wins, but look at their losses. Alabama lost at Vanderbilt. Ole Miss lost a home game to Kentucky. Those are clearly worse losses than Georgia's losses to Alabama and Ole Miss, both on the road. Look at Notre Dame. They lost to Northern Illinois. That's worse than a loss to Alabama and a loss to Ole Miss, isn't it? Even if it is only one loss instead of 2. So why is Georgia down at 10? Are they constantly winning games by the skin of their teeth? No, that's Miami. Moving down to the 12 to 15 range here, with fewer teams and the lower spots in the ranking, making more games relevant. For example, there are far more games that can help make a strong claim to being number 12 than to being number 3. I have decided to include each team's 4 best wins instead of 3 from here on. So the question is, why is Boise State ahead of SMU, BYU, and Texas A&M? Can you imagine a power conference team bragging about beating UNLV, Georgia Southern, Washington State, and San Jose State? It's so lackluster. Another point here, if the reason that Alabama and Ole Miss are ahead of Georgia is because of head-to-head results, then why is SMU above BYU? It doesn't make sense. Going down to the 19 to 22 range, we have Army, Tulane, Arizona State, and Iowa State. This is actually the exact opposite of the order in which I put them when I did my own rankings. Army in particular is too high here. Look at their 4 best wins. At North Texas, Rice, East Carolina, and at Florida Atlantic. Now, Rice, East Carolina, and Florida Atlantic have all fired their head coach after disappointing results this season. North Texas fired its defensive coordinator. It is truly incredible that Army has managed to have a schedule so bad. Bottom of the rankings here, the 23 through 25 spots, and comparing those teams to some other teams that could have been included over them. Especially, I'm looking at UNLV here at 24, because, oh boy, their wins are weak. I mean, Kansas isn't terrible. Houston's not great. But then Oregon State and Hawaii? Oregon State's having a really bad year, rebuilding the program essentially, after their coach left. And then it's Hawaii, who's just nothing. Compare that to LSU, whose wins at South Carolina and against Ole Miss are arguably the best pair of wins that any team has. And none of LSU's losses are bad losses. Look at Kansas State. They have road wins against Colorado and Tulane. We've ranked Pittsburgh, who won at Cincinnati, or Louisville, who won at Clemson. But no, they went with Missouri, UNLV, and Illinois instead for some reason. The CFP committee largely did not move teams who did not lose in relation to each other. There was only one instance in which they flipped teams who both did not lose. And that one instance was moving Alabama, who won against Mercer, above Miami, who did not play. Now, I understand moving Alabama up a spot based on resume improving. In fact, that's what I did in my own rankings. However, it's truly bizarre that was the only adjustment they made other than knocking teams down when they lost. Sometimes, like they just aren't taking this seriously, which is a real shame, considering that this is a massive sport with a huge number of fans.